All righty, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning.
Good morning.
Very nice. Okay, welcome to the St. Louis Regional Freightway's Take Flight Forum and Bi-State Development's headquarters. I'm Mary Lamie, Executive Vice President of Multimodal Enterprises. We're excited to have the directors from the region's 5 largest airports with us today to talk about the region's aviation aerospace ecosystem and collaboration that takes place amongst the airports that is unique and a model for success. I think it's been a while since these airports have actually been all together at one time, so we're very appreciative of their time today. This discussion is overdue based on many accomplishments and their support of each other and the industry that collectively has a total economic impact exceeding $10 billion annually. Today's discussion will help raise awareness of the region's robust aviation industry that is defined by the airports, their tenants, and aerospace manufacturing. The aviation industry has evolved through good and bad times and is highlighted by targeted efforts that focus on operations, infrastructure investment, industry leadership and expertise, and a proven track record for career development and job opportunities. We're going to have Talby Roach, Bi-State Development's President and CEO, provide some opening comments. So good morning, Talby.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for coming. In particular, we do have the Honorable Kurt Prenzler has joined us today. Mr. Prenzler, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, so what about Bi-State Development? Thank you so much for coming here. But you see the pictures on the wall. There's that big silver thing that we happen to run. You know, the Arch is one of our enterprises. And why is the Arch there? The Arch is there because even 100 years ago, the St. Louis region is a nexus point for rail, river, transit, and I would argue, obviously, in the aviation industry as well. And that's what we're talking about. We're all trying to move, including transit, out of that fog, out of that difficulty of the pandemic and figure out where our industries are going. And what I would argue and challenge all of you to think about today is lean into the strength of the St. Louis area. The strength of the St. Louis area is still the same as it was 100 years ago as it is today. We are a nexus point. We have an opportunity to connect not only the region across a river, 2 states, multiple jurisdictions, where we can really make a difference. Think of the St. Louis region that we want 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And I think that is accomplished by thinking of us as a nexus point, thinking of us as working together as professionals in the infrastructure industry to provide the infrastructure that our citizens need. So anyway, I thought of that today as, let me tell you, 99 times out of 100 when I'm coming into work, I will see a Union Pacific train coming across. Why? Because we are still a nexus point both in rail, river, all those industries. Let's lean into that strength and let's try to make a difference for our citizens. That's what I'm trying to do. Please join me in that. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Talby. So speaking of all the modes of transportation, we obviously in this audience have a lot of aviation people here, but we also have other modes of transportation represented. So again, I think that really highlights some of the great things that are going on in this area. I do want to mention and introduce Brent Wood with Terminal Railroad Association. He is their president. He is also the chairman of our Freight Development Committee. And as you know, we've got different committees within the Freightway. So I appreciate everyone taking time out of their schedule. Okay, so we've got a really ambitious agenda. We've got 5 panelists, and we hope to have at least 10 minutes of Q&A at the end. So please help yourself to the coffee and pastries that we have in the back, and that is thanks and compliments of Bi-State Development's River Bridge catering services. Restrooms are down the hall by the elevators and just to the left. Okay, so the theme of today's discussion focuses on the value of the region's aviation ecosystem and how it collectively contributes billions of dollars to the region's economy and is a model of success. So now we're going to talk about some numbers. Not a whole lot, but some. All right, here's where we're at. The region's 5 largest airports supports 36,500 direct and indirect jobs that include tenants within the airport property. The St. Louis MSA has 3.85 times the U.S. average number of aerospace jobs based on the size of our region. Average wage for an aerospace job in this region is right around $116,000 a year, proving the significance of continuing to grow that base and invest in our airport infrastructure. Based on the payroll and job creation from the 3 Illinois airports, the average compensation, including benefits, for an airport-related job is about $80,000 a year. So continuing with that theme of numbers, I'm going to introduce our panelists, starting with Danny Adams, Director of St. Louis Regional Airport, located in East Alton, Illinois. Danny is one of our newest airport directors, but not new to the St. Louis area. St. Louis Regional Airport supports more than 1,500 jobs with an annual economic impact of $480 million. Next is Rhonda Hamm-Niebruegge, Executive Director of St. Louis Lambert International Airport, who has been with the airport since 2010. The airport accounts for 7,000 jobs in the region, and a new economic impact study underway is anticipated to reveal the airport's impact has significantly grown from the $4.2 billion in 2013. Sandy Shore is the director of St. Louis Downtown Airport, located in Sauget and Cahokia Heights, Illinois. This airport is owned and operated by Bi-State Development and contributes more than $422 million in economic impact for the region and more than 1,500 full-time and part-time jobs. Next is Bryan Johnson, Director of MidAmerica St. Louis Airport, located in Muscuda, Illinois. This airport operates under a joint use agreement with Scott Air Force Base. The latest IDOT study shows that collectively they have $3.1 billion of economic impact, supporting 23,400 jobs. And finally, we have John Bales, the Director of Spirit of St. Louis Airport, located in Chesterfield, Missouri. John began his career at St. Louis Lambert Airport and is one of many examples of the strength of the aviation ecosystem. Spirit Airport has more than 3,000 employees on site between airport operations and tenants, and total annual economic impact that exceeds $400 million. So welcome to our panelists. Okay, so first question, we're going to ask the same question to all 5 of you. Danny, we're going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about your airport and the unique niche your facility fills in the St. Louis region's aviation sector.
Certainly. Well, first off, thank you, Mary, for bringing us all together. Thanks for staying on behalf of the board, and thanks for putting this event together. Very nice. So St. Louis Regional Airport, located about 30 minutes from downtown in Madison County, Illinois. We bring in business from the aviation side from Fortune 500 companies to your private aircraft owner, single engine, twin engine aircraft, all the way up to your multi-million-dollar corporate aircraft that come in for maintenance. We can serve from your smallest little single engine plane up to the largest aircraft that can fly. We have a great tenant of Westar Aviation, who have about 600 jobs on the airport, and they do any type of maintenance repair on aircraft, from paint jobs to engine repairs to interior jobs. They do just about anything. Great asset to have. We also have about 120 T hangars for individuals to store their aircraft. So not interested in bringing in the commercial airline, but interested in catering to those private aircraft owners.
Thank you, Danny. Rhonda, you want to talk about St. Louis Lambert Airport?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So St. Louis Lambert is the largest airport not only in this region, but in the state of Missouri. And if you think about St. Louis on a nationwide level, we're the 32nd largest airport in the country. So when you think about 450 public airports, not including general aviation, we're number 32 in that ecosystem. So we have a significant spot within aviation, and I think sometimes people forget that here. But we're not just focused on the passenger side of the house. We've really looked to expand all of our streams of revenue, both from an aeronautical and a non-aeronautical standpoint. So in 2016, we had about 125 million pounds of cargo. Last year, we had 251 million pounds of cargo. Some of that was driven by the FedEx, UPS, Amazon, DHL operation, but a lot of it was also driven by the growth of Southwest and the belly cargo that Southwest can carry because they've got so many flights here per day. And then we also created something that some of you may not know is a USDA port of embarkation here. That allows us to have live animal charters. And you know, it's an interesting thing because you don't really think about animals flying, but there's a lot of product being purchased in the Midwest from all around the world for beef and cattle. And we've been able to ship a number of those hogs, especially into South America. I think we've had about 8 or 9 shipments now. And that's a growing commodity that we want to be a part of. So while Chicago does have a port of embarkation, what we're learning and what we're hearing is that ours is far more efficient and easier for those handlers. So if it's a full dedicated freighter, which is always a 747, and it's nice to see those coming into the airport, that's a big piece of where we're thinking about our future as well. And then, the last thing I would tell you is that, it was a big year for us with the announcement of Lufthansa. I know some of us were talking about it this morning. But really being able to bring a mainline European back after 20 years was a big deal. And that was through the support of this region. And you heard Mary and you heard both Talby talk about the fact that we play as a region, we play better. And that flight only came because of the regional support that we got to try and attract that. And it's doing incredibly well. So.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Yep.
Okay, Sandy, you want to talk about St. Louis Downtown Airport?
Yeah, thank you, Mary. Good morning, everyone. So we're very similar to Danny and John. I think the number one most distinctive characteristic of St. Louis Downtown Airport is just that, our proximity to downtown. We're right across the river. And as a general aviation airport without commercial service, we really see us as the front door to this community. We get a lot of business and corporate aviation that comes in, and we want to make sure that the moment they step out to potentially expand to St. Louis, that we're putting our best foot forward, including regional events, the most recent one being the NASCAR Cup Series. That was a huge success for us. We welcomed over 40 charters, 50 plus people on each one. Your drivers, your crew, your NASCAR officials, they were doing on-site visits well before they even announced it. So we really like to think that we played a big role in that and want to make sure that when people are looking to come to the region, that they're having a good experience from the moment they get here. And then similar to Danny, we have a wide range of users, from your single engine hobbyist to your business corporate aviation, 3 flight schools, multiple aircraft maintenance and helicopter maintenance, headquarters to Helicopter Inc., who is a nationwide company, our great FBOs, and of course Gulfstream Aerospace, which is very similar to the West Star setup that Danny explained, and look forward to talking on that later and continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Sandy. Brian.
Thank you, Mary. Good morning, everyone. It's a real privilege to be here. I appreciate all of you taking time to be with us. For MidAmerica St. Louis, I've been at that airport 3 years, and what I've experienced really relates well, I think, to all of us being up here and our local economy and how we're really regionalized as an airport, and we're better together than individual. And that really goes back, I think the first thing that I noticed, or one thing that's really special about MidAmerica, is our relationship and our partnership with Scott Air Force Base. It's really unique. I think it's pretty special because of the history of the base, first of all, and then I think it's pretty special about how MidAmerica came together with Scott Air Force Base back in the late 90s to develop it and shape it to the airport that it is today. We certainly are one of only 30 joint use airports in the country. We capitalize and utilize resources, find new partnerships and new opportunities to support our efforts. But there's no greater joy talking about 2 runways rather than 1, and that's what we're able to do, whether it's on the civilian side or the DoD side. The other piece that Mary alluded to earlier really is the economic engine that we are. We share, all of us up here have 3-letter identifiers associated with our airports. BLV happens to be our 3-letter identifier. Well, that also is the Scott Air Force Base 3-letter identifier. So when these agencies do these economic impact studies, they're looking collectively at that airport unit, if you will. And there's no doubt that is significant and unique for us as an airport. And more recently, since I've gotten to town, we're hitting some new highs, if you will, as far as air travel and passengers. And some of our efforts certainly are focused on furthering the low-cost carrier model, helping promote ultra-low-cost carriers as well, complementing what Rhonda and her team does so well over at STL.
Thank you, Brian. John?
Thanks, Mary. Welcome, everybody. First is the Arch is a gateway to the West. Aviation is a gateway to the world. That's what it is. Spirit of St. Louis Airport, we consider ourselves the business aviation center of the Midwest. We have nearly 400 based aircraft, 100 based jets, full-time customs port director. Just Unfortunately, it was open during COVID, so we didn't get a ribbon cutting, but prior to COVID, we were averaging almost one international arrival a day. I don't think most people realize that. The airport itself, we've got 3 FBOs, a variety of customers. We have a lot of maintenance operators. We don't have any as big as Westar or Gulfstream, but we have quite a few. We have home to many corporate flight departments. We also have a lot of charter operators. And the charter operators did really, really well in COVID, and they continue to do so. People that maybe had the means but had never tried it and liked it. It's been good for us. Our traffic, meaning takes off and landings and fuel sales, are the highest they've been in 10 to 15 years. The future looks bright for Spirit. We have a great family of tenants that we interact with every day. And we're all here to promote the region and support each other. And I think it's great we're doing this. We haven't been able to do this before COVID, and we have 3 new stars to join us. And I look forward to it, and I thank you for putting this on.
Thank you, John. Okay, next question, and same question we have for all 5 of you. Danny, we're going to start with you again. What is the most significant initiative or initiatives currently underway at your airport or coming up?
Certainly. So at St. Louis Regional, we're interested in expanding on our not just aeronautical business, but our non-aeronautical business as well. Bringing in a flight school, something that the airport's lacking. Try to increase those fuel sales, try to increase that activity levels. We want to try to reopen the restaurant. We have a restaurant space on the airport. We want to try to get that going again so that we can bring those visitors into the airport and give people a reason to come visit us. Looking to do additional work on building or improving our infrastructure. We are scheduled for next year alone to do $7 million worth of improvements to the airfield and the airport. That includes a $5 million runway rehabilitation where we will replace the asphalt, repave it, and install new LED energy efficient lighting. We're looking to improve our public parking lots to improve accessibility to the airport, as well as improve our aviation fuel farm, something that's aging and needs replaced to provide fuel to the aircraft. Lastly, we are going to be working on a pavement rehabilitation project for around the T hangars to improve pavement conditions around the T hangars for those small aircraft. So lots of movement, lots of improvements going on, both aeronautical and non-aeronautical.
All right, very good. And I think we're going to hear that there's a theme with the infrastructure part that each of you are contributing to the area. So thank you. Rhonda.
Yeah, so fuel farms is interesting because last year we opened a brand new fuel farm at St. Louis Lambert, about a $70 million investment by the airlines, and it's just right across from the Boeing headquarters on what we call the Brownlee site. So we had a fuel farm that had been built in 1960 and was all underground. This is a state-of-the-art above ground, and we just last week cut the ribbon cutting of the decommissioning of the old fuel farm as well. So that's exciting. I'm not sure anybody's heard, but we are working on a pretty big project right now, which is thinking about a consolidated terminal for our airport. And that's the project that I think will carry us well into the next decade. But for us, we started looking at our master plan about 2.5 years ago. WSP has been our consultant along with a barrage of others in that group. But it really highlighted where we're at from a facility standpoint. We've always known we have a great runway infrastructure, and the team does an incredible job of maintaining that in conjunction with the FAA and our partners. But we've been able to, what I would consider, make the airport as good as possible from a facility standpoint. But as we dug into this master plan and really looked at what the next decade's going to cost us to just keep the infrastructure alive without any enhancements in terms of the efficiencies. We have 2 separate terminals. We have 2 garages, both which are understaffed. Talk about adding parking. I could use some of your parking. And we think about 4 separate checkpoints, 2 separate bag system, all those things that are inefficient. So our master plan really highlighted where do we need to go for the future. So we've been out working with our airline partners and working with the community on where we think we need to go. And so if you haven't had a chance to look at our transformation, there's a lot online at our FlySTL website about it. I'm out speaking about it at a lot of different venues. But I think it's a project that we can hopefully come to fruition here in the next 12 to 14 months. And you'd see a lot of deconstruction happening over the next 2 to 3 years And then if everything moves forward, we see construction start in '26. And it would be a single consolidated terminal, keeping the historic domes that we have, but everything else would be reimagined and new, and I think it would really carry us well into decades of the future. So that's our project.
Very nice. Rhonda had mentioned the consolidation of the two terminals, and that's a project that the Freightway has included on our priority project list. And that's an example of, again, one of the many successes this region has where it's a bi-state initiative. All modes of transportation, public, private, and 2 states are supporting. So thank you. Sandy.
So continuing the theme of infrastructure, our latest initiative is the construction of a ground engine run-up and compass calibration facility. It's really quite a neat engineering feat, very unique. So what it will do is, first and foremost, support some of our largest tenants. Between Gulfstream Aerospace, who does maintenance, repair, and overhauls, and a small footprint of Westar Aviation, they do over 500 high-powered engine run-ups every year. So what this facility will provide is a place for them to, an isolated place for them to safely do those run-ups, while simultaneously being better neighbors and really deflecting that jet blast and that noise upwards. So we see it as a very important project that supports our jobs and our tenants, and we couldn't have done it without our great elected officials in Illinois who helped us secure a $5 million grant through the Rebuild Illinois program. We're happy to say it is underway as of last month and look forward to opening it up for use next year.
Very nice. Bryan.
MidAmerica, there are several actually initiatives. Again, you're probably pretty familiar with the name Boeing. It's pretty common around this area for sure. But we're very, very fortunate. Boeing has established a Boeing production facility for a new aircraft at MidAmerica. While we're not directly associated with that project, it's certainly having an impact on all of our staffing and how we're coordinating with Boeing Corp itself. From that, with a facility, then you need other infrastructure to connect to our runway system. So fortunately, we've been able to find $37 million to build a new taxiway and bridge that will allow activity or that connectivity to those movement areas. Along with that, we've got a terminal project underway. That'll be finished sometime in 2023. Metrolink, again, we're really the beneficiary of that final link to connect to actually the airport. So we'll have a train station at the airport. You'll be able to utilize Metrolink from BLV to STL or anywhere else. Metrolink may take you here in the metro area. So that is just a wonderful initiative to have in play. The last two, if you will, one is directly related to our air service development program. We are engaged and expect to be under construction next year with a new U.S. Customs Federal Inspection Station, which will allow then for further development of your low-cost carriers that are supporting international travel in and out of the metro area, as well as domestically. So a lot of great things, and again, I feel very fortunate to be at MidAmerica at this point in time.
Very good. We also have a project on the Freightways infrastructure list, and then also there's several industrial real estate sites surrounding the airport that we're promoting as well. So thank you. John.
First of all, before I get into my Sandy, ground run-up closure, we have one. Put it in about 10 years ago. It goes a long way with the citizens. It's economic development because we had to restrict run-ups at night. Mm-hmm. It really works. Congratulations. As far as our projects, again, infrastructure, unlike Rhonda finishing up our master plan, we're just starting our master plan, and that's our roadmap for the future. It's going to guide several very important projects. One is widening and strengthening of our north runway. That's 5,000 feet by 75. The reason that's important is because we're going to have to reconstruct our main runway, and a majority of our traffic, 5,000 by 75 isn't going to work, and the pavement's not strong. So getting that project done, and then reconstructing the main runway, and then the 2 parallel taxiways, we're going to do maintenance repairs because the amount of traffic and the weight of the traffic that we have, all said, those could be about $50 million of projects. On the theme of aeronautical, non-aeronautical, Spirit is a self-supporting enterprise fund, as you may or may not know. We have no debt service, a strong reserve, something I'm very proud of. But we have to do that to create revenue, to keep that status. We're currently working with a large corporation flight department to build a flight, actually upgrade their flight department because they're adding more and more airplanes. So with that, other projects that we're working on, and I'll get into a little bit later, but we really focus a lot on giving back to the community and working with STEM and some other really neat initiatives. And then other than that, it's the airport continues to grow. Our projects sound like there's only 4, but these are 4 massive projects. And it's going to take several years. And we just hired our consultant, and we're looking forward to getting it done.
Outstanding. Okay, now we're going to change gears. And so now we've got individual questions for all 5 of you. So we've got 2 of them for each of you. So Danny, we're going to start with you. You are new to the St. Louis region. What drew you to the job at St. Louis Regional Airport, and what are your initial thoughts about the aviation industry in this region?
Certainly. So St. Louis has been home for me. I grew up here, went to school here. My first job in aviation was actually at St. Louis Downtown Airport as an intern. So great opportunity to come home, couldn't pass up on it. And look at the panelists up here. I mean, there's great relationships between all of us up here. We all want to see each other succeed. We all have our own little market of aviation, and we're all excited when somebody else gets another project or another airline service or an improvement to their airport. So having that friendly competition was an environment that I knew existed here, and something I was excited to come back to.
All right, and I appreciate you emphasizing that robust market that we have, and because of that, we're able to attract people like yourself back to the region. So great. All right, St. Louis Regional Airport is home to Westar Aviation, which has almost 600 employees on site. Why do you think Westar does so well in that environment?
So Westar is a great tenant to have. About 600 employees, and they are 600 very good paying jobs. The average pay at the airport there is $110,000 per employee, so very good jobs. They don't have enough people though. They are constantly hiring, constantly trying to get more for all different varieties of mechanics, administration, anything. They need more people. They can do just about anything, like I said earlier, anything on an aircraft they can touch, and they can touch just about any type of aircraft as well. They're centrally located in the area, which I think is good to bring tenants or business in from not just the United States, but from around the world. They have planes and customers coming to visit them in East Alton, Illinois, which I think is pretty special. It's not uncommon to see a plane from Mexico or Australia or anywhere else from Europe be at the airport on the ramp. Great asset to have at the airport. With those 600 jobs, though, they're constantly hiring. They are working and partnering with local community colleges to try to get those students, college-age individuals, interested in what they can do and aware of what they do, and kind of have that pool of candidates to hire from. I think there's enough universities and programs and colleges in the area to help benefit companies like Westar in their hiring.
All right, very good. Okay, Sandy, this one focuses on the challenges, and you've been in your position 8 months? 7 months? Somewhere right around there?
Something. Yeah.
So this is a topic that you hit the ground running with this topic. So what do you see as the greatest challenge facing the aviation industry right now, and is your airport working on any solutions to that challenge?
So, I mean, my response is going to mirror a lot of what Danny just said. So I think we can all agree, and it's not just our industry these days, is workforce development. So you think about the 35,000 plus jobs that Mary talked about amongst our 5 airports. In Illinois alone, the aviation industry is a $96 billion industry, and that requires a lot of talent to support it. So what we are trying to do at St. Louis Downtown Airport is really engage with our 2 collegiate programs, Southwestern Illinois College and St. Louis University, and start the education process early and engage young individuals and try to garner some interest with them in aviation. A theme that you'll see a lot is, oh, I want to be a pilot because my dad was, or my uncle had, ran this FBO here. I didn't have that experience. I don't have anybody in aviation in my family, so I had to find aviation. I want to kind of flip the script and find great young people and give them the interest in aviation first. So we do that by really engaging in our educational programs, as many career fairs as you can. A lot of our great tenants go directly into the high schools around here. St. Louis University does an aviation camp every year, and we get kids from all around the country all corners of them. And most recently, we did a Girls in Aviation Day at the St. Louis University hangar, which also included our friends at Southwestern Illinois College. As a female in aviation, of course, I enjoyed it a little bit more. But we had girls from Girl Scouts to seniors at high school in West County. So what we're really trying to do is engage young people early and really show them what aviation has to offer. You know, not just the pilots, which we all know of that shortage, mechanics, airport operations, dispatchers. We need them all right now. So really getting that interest early, and hopefully it, they get a great growing career out of it.
Okay, very good. We're going to stay with this theme on jobs. Okay. So from a jobs perspective, what are the jobs St. Louis Downtown Airport is supporting outside of the direct airport jobs?
So at St. Louis Downtown Airport, I kind of touched on it earlier, we're really proud of the diversity of our tenants and our businesses. Even though we all have our own niche, at St. Louis Downtown, we really hit all the corners. We have multiple aircraft maintenance operators, multiple helicopter operators, 3 flight schools with St. Louis Flight Training, Ideal Aviation, and St. Louis University, the oldest operating flight school in the country. We also have like I said, the headquarters of Helicopter Inc. that do charter and helicopter services, our news helicopters, our great fixed-base operator with Jet Aviation that provide our frontline services, and of course our largest employer, Gulfstream Aerospace, which currently has 375 jobs. They recently announced an expansion for an additional 140, and we hope that with our infrastructure improvements for them, we continue to see that grow. They're getting more close to West Star with finishing cabinetry work and painting, so even skilled trade workers are important to us. So between all of those people I just talked about, they all employ a number of people, and we just want to continue to support them because their thriving business means a healthier airport for us.
All right, very good. Bryan, you're next. You're going to get a softball question. This is the one about collaboration. And we've talked about collaboration. Sandy talked about the engine run-up, and I wanted to mention during the period of time we were trying to hire Sandy, I had reached out to Rhonda a couple times as far as infrastructure funding, and that's where I think this is just a great forum that we're having. They were emphasizing that. And actually, when we went through the interview process for Sandy, I reached out to Bryan and John, and they actually sat in the interviews for Sandy. We reached out to Rhonda, but there was a conflict, and Danny, for some reason, the 5 of us were not invited to your interview, but we stand ready if you need any help from that. So, Bryan, we've talked about the spirit of collaboration and support that exists among the different airports here in the region as opposed to an environment of competition. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I think we're all competitive by nature, right? We're all here. I think it's natural to be a little bit competitive, and that's no different amongst us here or you in the room and in the industries that you work within. For me personally and my family, when we were looking at relocating to the St. Louis area, a couple things that I was really more interested in. One is really what is the aviation aerospace industry like here compared to other places around the country? In Denver, the GDP for aviation and aerospace is somewhere between 17 and 20%. So it was real apparent to me that there was a similar community here. There was significant aviation and aerospace, and not just with Boeing, but all the other entities that integrate and work with our airports collectively and otherwise. So that was really one factor. You talk about collaboration. I knew there was an element of collaboration here because we did very similar things in Denver as we're doing now. The other thing, I think it's more personal, and that relates to the leadership up here on the stage with me, and in particular, Rhonda and John. So the thing about aviation, it's again, probably very similar to all of your industries. You get to know each other, whether directly or indirectly. You see them at conferences. You see them post articles. You see them write articles. You see them leading not only their airports, but you see them contributing nationally to other airports and the entire national airspace system. So again, knowing that I had good friends and partners here, Rhonda and John to start with, of course, and maybe we're a little bit more of the veterans, but certainly forging ahead with Sandra and Danny as well. So that I think will really dovetail well for all of us.
Very good. Okay, Boeing has become an increasingly important tenant for MidAmerica St. Louis Airport. Tell us a little bit more about that relationship, the unique work being done with the MQ-25 and their expansion plans.
Yeah, I have to really shout out to Congressman Costello, Chairman Curran, and many of the others that have been a part of the history of Boeing over on the Illinois side, starting, I think, with Boeing St. Clair, as we call it, back in 2010. That was really the seed, if you will, that started the growth and where we are today, and really privileged to have in our community another production facility, and that's really, really key. We're talking about 34 acres, 300,000 square feet under roof. The other day, we were at the topping out ceremony, and it's 1,000 feet from one end to the other, just in case you want to go for a walk or a wellness program. But it's significant from I think, we're all talking about employees, the skilled labor, the technicians, the engineers, the types of jobs, 150 to 200 jobs initially, possibly up to 300 total. Production line is somewhere between 12 and 15 annually once they get spooled up. So the relationship has been pretty special. The MQ itself is built off of an F-18 platform. So again, very, very accommodating. There's a lot of symmetry really between our Boeing facility and the one over at STL. So a lot of great energy there. And I think ultimately, whether it's Boeing or whether it's MRO, as we call it, maintenance repair operator, air service, we're certainly engaged, and that's certainly where I'm oriented, but it's pretty special to be working with Boeing.
All right, very good. Okay, Rhonda, you get a softball question. This is your ecosystem question. What are your thoughts on how robust the aviation sector in our region is, and what advantages do you see in having the 5 different airports with different niches?
I think one of the things unique about St. Louis and the region is that we really don't compete like a lot of other places. Kansas City is the nearest large passenger terminal, and we don't compete against Kansas City. There might be a handful of passengers outside that Columbia or Boonville, but Kansas City has their own customers, and we have ours. If you look at other states in the region, and Danny came from that, when you look at Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Akron, Dayton, they're all pulling from each other for that passenger traffic. We're not. So I think we're unique in that. But then when you put the greater group together and you think about the offerings that we can have, whether it's on the passenger side of the house, the cargo side of the house, general aviation, and we have general aviation too at the airport. So if you're a customer in this region, you have a choice of going just about anywhere that works for you. And I think that's a very unique place to be in. And then you think about the Boeing and what it brings to this region that is cohesive, I think, to aviation. And, like Bryan, they're in our backyard. And while sometimes, that can be a little bit of an aggravation for us on a daily basis, if you think about it in the broader scheme, it's an incredible asset for us to have. So I don't know that there's another region out there that can say, when you put the 5 of us together, the offering is as good as what we have. I mean, it's incredible here from a job standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint, from the creation of, just look at what it takes for, on the Boeing side, to bring all the parts in and the jobs that creates. And then you think about from the West Star Aviation and what Sandra's got downtown and the jobs and the mechanics and all of the parts that it takes to bring that all creates these subsidiaries. And so when we think about that as an ecosystem, and while Bryan's right, I think we're all competitive, our natures are very competitive, we don't look at each other as a detriment. We look at each other as a strength of this region and why we can and should be working to attract more aviation industry-related opportunities here, because I don't think there's another place in the country that has the strength that we do. I really don't.
All right, very good. Okay, as an engineer, as much as I wanted to really auger down and talk about infrastructure and construction schedules and scope of work, we're not. We're going to focus on this theme of collaboration. Rhonda, do you have anything else to share about collaboration between the leadership and staff at your facility and the other airports in the region that you may want to talk about? We know that John, I think, started out at Lambert, but again, there's that mobility amongst the airports, which I think is really healthy. That helps all of us.
Yeah, John's probably one of my best friends, because when I first came into this job, it was still a learning curve. Even though you have an aviation background, I hadn't been at the airport side. And I knew John would be honest with me, brutally honest. So I relied on him a lot. And then when I lost one of our key individuals in a role, I called on John, and we worked as a partnership with the county, and we borrowed John for, what, a year and a half, John?
Close.
Yeah. So to come out, because I knew that he could help us. And the county was willing to let his expertise come to our airport so that we could get through a challenging time with a lack of staff trying to keep things running and smooth. And so when you think about that type of collaboration, that wasn't easy for St. Louis County to loan John to us for a year and a half. But again, it helped us and it helped the region as a whole. So I think that's one example. But I don't think there's a day that I don't think if I need to pick up a phone and call any of the partners here in this room, I can do that. And we all have different backgrounds that can bring some expertise, even the young ones. Sandy still brings expertise. And I will tell you, we worked a lot with Sandy when she was over on the Illinois side at another airport, because we reach out a lot to our essential air service markets. That's another critical piece that a lot of airports don't really care about because it's not a lot of traffic, but for us, it's a dot on our map. And if we can bring a couple thousand people from Quincy in, or a couple thousand people from Kirksville in to our airport connecting somewhere else, that's a great thing. So we worked a ton with Sandy when she was over there, because we did a partnership every year with those essential air service markets. So this industry just keeps coming back around to you. And you know, you don't want to make an enemy in it, because at some point you're going to cross that enemy, and you better hope that you're better than they are if you make one. So I just feel like here we all have you know, enough rapport with each other, and we're still learning Danny. He's new, but we're grateful to have him, and you know, I think that's really a good place to be in.
Outstanding. Okay, John Bales, you've been doing this for a long time. This is not a question about your age. Okay? Can you share some perspective on how the aviation industry has evolved and the resiliency this industry has exhibited here in the St. Louis region? Is there anything interesting to share about the region's aviation sector when times are good or during particularly challenging times?
It's very cyclical. It's going to go up and it's going to go down. I'm a believer that out of bad comes good. You can go back to when I first started at Spirit, and yes, that does show my age. I've been in the industry 34 years.
You
Spirit,
mentioned
28.
it, not me.
And I started right after the flood, the cleanup of the flood in '93. It doesn't get a whole lot harder than that. We had a partnership with Lambert. Spirit was one of the airports that wasn't supposed to flood. So we had 734 airplanes the day before. We moved them up to Lambert, shut down runways, taxiways. It's that collaboration. We also reach out, St. Charles County, Smart Field, they flood. We call them and say, hey, airplanes can park here for free. So coming out of the flood, I always say the 90s were the worst and the best of times for Spirit. And that's what I mean, it gets better. Our tenants pulled together, the industry pulled together. The late 90s was a good economy. We developed about 60 acres of, one was a flight school, one was a major corporation, and another was a brand new FBO. And that happened within a 3-year period. And then you have September 11th. Nobody saw that coming. That was really hard on the industry, but we recovered. Then you had the recession. Then we had the tornado at Lambert. Yeah, we had the tornado at Lambert. People came together to support. And then we had COVID. COVID was much harder on the air carrier airports than it was general aviation. But this industry, nationwide, but in particularly this region and this state, people were there to help. When the hurricanes hit Florida, I knew a couple of airport directors down there and called to see if we could send help, if they needed anything, or what we could do. So it's very important that we stick together. Like Rhonda said, we talk all the time. We had a pretty serious crash. One of the first calls I got was her, which is great because you need that help. There was another aircraft accident that happened towards Creve Coeur. The first 2 people on the phone were me and Rhonda. Is it somebody from Spirit, somebody from Lambert? So that's the way it is. You got to work together. We are competitors, but we're a team. And there's a lot of people in this room that are in our industry that are also supporters and teams. So stuff is going to happen, but you have to be resilient because, as we talked about earlier, economic impact. There's a lot of people's lives that rely on all these airports and their livelihoods. So you got to come back bigger and better.
Very good. Okay, Spirit of St. Louis Airport is perhaps best known among the general public for your air shows. Tell us how that special event has evolved over the years and why events like this are so important for the industry.
Okay. Actually, the old air show was 1992, 2007. My interview, anybody that knows him, was my predecessor and happened to be Rhonda's predecessor, Dick Rabko. And he called me and said, hey, why don't you come down to interview for the weekend? That was 3 days with him from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. But the air show we used to give to Children's Miracle Network. It was a carnival. It was fireworks. It went away because we thought development was going to happen. And in 07, like I said, the recession happened in 08. 2014 was the 50th anniversary of Spirit of St. Louis Airport. Blue Angels have been saying, hey, why don't we come back to St. Louis? They're built by Boeing. What a better fit. But we decided not to do a carnival, just 2 days, and focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, because that is the future for young people. So also I was a little greedy because a lot of people that would not give to the air show because it's an air show gave because of STEM. A lot of technology companies had nothing to do with aviation to help us raise money because it's a non-for-profit 501c3, which protects the county and the airport from liability. But the main purpose is reaching out to young people. Our STEM area is first robotics, science center, and we also had an essay contest for some young people. Well, they don't write much anymore, so we had them do a video, Why You're Inspired by Aviation. And the top 20 kids got to come to the performers' dinner and meet them and talk to them. And the top 6 got to go fly with the Aeroshell, Phillips Aerostar team. And, you know, that's pretty inspiring. Those kids make me feel really dumb when I talk to them. But when we focus on those kind of things, it gives back. And, you know, this is just one small example. There's 2 young ladies at the air show this year. One was Francis Howell, high school graduate. She flew in a C-17, big cargo airplane. She also flies for United, I believe. And I was talking to her, and she said she was inspired by our previous air show to become a pilot. There's another young lady there who flies, she's a major, and she flies Hercules, C-130s. And she was at an air show and when she was a little girl, and with her dad, and Patty Wagstaff, a female performer, was flying. She said, Daddy, girls can fly. So that's just one of those stories. We also are very, and I'm probably running a little bit on time, but a Red Tail Cadet program. It's based off the Tuskegee Airmen, and we're teaching kids from Ferguson to fly for free. And we had them at the air show. So the air show is great for the region. It gives attention to St. Louis, our great aviation history, and that's the reason I'm crazy enough to do it.
That's outstanding. That's great. Okay, so that completes our formal discussion, and I said we really wanted to have 10 minutes of Q&A because we've got such a great audience. So we've got time for a couple questions. I'm going to have some wrap-up comments, and then our panelists have agreed that they will be available for the next 30 minutes if we don't have time for all the questions. So with that, I'm going to open up and see if the audience has any questions. Dan.
Hold on just a second.
I don't know about a microphone.
Human.
Sure, I understand. Thank you very much, Dog. This is a fantastic program, and I really appreciate it. And the positivity is marvelous. But now I'm going to ask, where are you stepping on each other's toes that you ought to maybe watch what you're trying to increase that collaboration? You've got such fabulous assets. Let's make sure we make the best use of them for the region and minimize wasteful competition with these wonderful assets. Just you know, where could we do better and increase that collaboration?
So I'll start with that one. You know, we support each other, but, you know, a fixed base operator, we all have them. You know, they sell gas and fuel. Whenever there's a new fixed base operator at Lambert, I will tell them, or if I get one at Spirit, and say, look, if one of our tenants comes to you, charge them what you should charge them. Don't lowball them. And her customers will come down. I tell my new FBO manager the same thing. They're just going to turn around. If they come to me and they get a low ball, they're going to go back to Signature, and all that does is hurt our market. It softens the real estate market, the whole aviation market. So we have to be competitive. You can't give stuff away. But as Mr. Newman said, the collaboration is really important, and every day we try to do something a little better. I mean, I sit on the airport commission at Lambert. I abstain when it comes to general aviation, but I'm still there to support Rhonda, you know. So that's the way it is. And he reached out when you first got here, and we talked, and I knew of you in the industry. I've known Sandy for years, and I was very grateful, and I thought it was very well done that you had us sit in the interviews. Getting to know Danny. So doing things like this and communicating together, we're not trying to steal from each other, but a lot of regions they do.
Very good.
Well, and I think one additional thing we think about, and you know, I don't think it's probably a secret that in the past there's been some, I don't want to call it conflict, but there's probably been some hard feelings between MidAmerica and St. Louis, and I never quite understood that because they're doing a job just like I'm doing a job. You know, I was hired to run the airport. I was hired to grow the services here. I was hired to be able to get us, you know, financially sound, the same as what Tim and or Bryan's doing. So that is what it is. And within the region, if there's people that it's closer to Illinois that can take a flight out of Spirit and get to a leisure destination, good for them. I mean, that I just don't see that as an issue, I think. And so I think we're working much better, I would say, in the last 6-7 years on thinking about how do we think about selling this overall region as a whole versus trying to argue that, you know, why are you getting that flight or why are you incentivizing to bring that there? I mean, I've never quite understood that. So I think there's always going to be perceptions, and there's always going to be some past history that people hold on to. I think if you can't let it go, you should just step aside, okay, and move on. But,
Yeah, I think that's a good comment, Rhonda. And past history in some ways is important, I think, of, just aviation history in general. STL celebrated, I think, 101 here recently, or maybe it'll be 102 next year. But, even for MidAmerica, we're a young airport, if you will, but it's really the market forces that drive opportunity. And market forces really are probably the biggest driver for why John may end up with a corporate flight department versus Sandy or Danny. And same way with the history of STL as an air carrier airport. We can't forget about the history of TWA, of American Airlines. Maybe there are certain pieces we would like to leave behind.
and Ozark.
Okay. That was long ago. But really, so we're at a different point in time. Our pace is different. So we have to think more regionally. Yes, we compete, but also this is a global market we're in, friends. So we have to think much bigger than our own local neighborhood playground. We have to really take advantage, leverage all of our strengths in a way where we can, foster more energy into Metro St. Louis. And I would even submit to you that as airports, we're a pretty good barometer for the economic forces at play, let's say. What's going on at the airport? If we're doing well, most of the rest of the metro area is going to be doing pretty well. So, keep an eye on all of us, and hopefully, we'll continue to collaborate where we can and charge down new channels with new opportunities as the market forces dictate.
All right, very good. Good question, Dan. Okay, do we have another question? Jennifer.
Thank you. Good morning, directors. I'm Jennifer. I'm from WSP, up the stairs a bit. You talked about some disruptors that happened in the past, and were making my eye twitch when you were doing that. What are some disruptors that are coming, and what are you doing to prepare for those?
Well, I won't say what I'm going to think, but the economy, obviously.
Yeah.
But, when the fuel prices went up during the fuel crisis and recession, our traffic went way down. But it's not down now because everything costs more, so companies have to get to where they're going to sell. A lot of the things I talked about happening in the past are totally unexpected. You can hope for the best and plan for the worst. And Jennifer, if I could foresee the future, I probably wouldn't be working for the government. I'd probably be on an island somewhere. So, and I'm glad you didn't ask any engineering questions of us.
Yeah. I think there's two things I think about when I think about disruptors. I think COVID set a whole new light for our industry. It was very unexpected. I don't think anybody realized the devastation that it caused for a year and a half. And fortunately, we're coming out of that, and we're coming out stronger than we were before, because that's what happens with every sort of disaster, if you want to call it, is you get stronger and you learn. But I think it did set a really stark tone to think about this will happen again sometime in the future with some other, whether it's a pandemic or some other issue, and we have to think about that and be prepared for that downturn. I mean, these guys had the same issue, but we went from 40,000 people a day to 500. I mean, think about that. Overnight, I mean, I was just like, I don't even know where to go right now. It was so devastating. So I think that's one disruptor we have to think about. The other one, obviously, is what's happening right now with Russia and Ukraine and all of that. And that's going to have an impact. If that continues to grow, if that conflict continues to get beyond the boundaries of just Russia and Ukraine, I think that's going to have an impact on our industry, especially on commercial aviation, as to where people won't go, or as to the need for more pilots to be pulled into the military scene out of their day-to-day flying of the commercial airlines. And that's a challenge. Pilots is a challenge right now. And so when you think about a conflict like that, and so many pilots both are military and fly for the commercial airlines, if they're pulled out of that, and what does that do to the industry? It has an impact on airlines having to pull back again because they don't have the staffing for the airplanes. So I think those are the two things that probably keep me awake at night, just thinking about some of the future challenges that can happen overnight.
Very good. Next question. Got time for probably two more questions. Anyone else? Steve Zuber?
Yeah, so economic development, when you look at maybe corporations, they want direct flights and be able to go anywhere in the world. Have you seen any changes in that with your airports, or have you also seen maybe corporations, instead of taking regular passenger, they start to have their own planes and jets? Have you seen any changes in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we see that every day. And as far as the economic development part of that, what drives that, and everybody can agree, we are running out of spaces at airports. So we would love, and Danny talks about economic development, both aeronautical and non-aeronautical. A lot of times, your ability to do that development is directly related to the infrastructure that you have. So our struggle right now is we don't have the connecting infrastructure to develop those. But we absolutely have had, similar to John, some of our best months ever these last couple months. So even though we're worried about the economy, right now we're seeing a growth as far as businesses coming to St. Louis.
Very good. All right, one more question, and we're going to wrap this up. Go ahead.
For Danny, please. Is there any information that could be made public at this time for planned expansion of Westar Aviation? I keep hearing a lot of general information that's out there, but nothing specific. Is that something that you could speak about?
Yeah, so Westar's definitely interested in expanding. I think they've made that known. They got a couple other locations that they want to expand as well. They have more planes parked on the ramp right now than they have space for. The hangars are jam-packed full. Like I said, they don't have enough people to work on those planes. They have a waiting list of clients just waiting to come in. They have expressed interest. Right now, there are no immediate drawings finalized or in the works. They are working on expansions, though, at St. Louis Regional.
No, thank you. Representing Southwestern Illinois College, and we're looking at, there again, the need and the opportunity in the area to expand programs and enlarge programs. We've made a robust movement on industrial technology. We have a new building going up right now, and that's going to be followed by another one 2 years down the road. But we're also looking at dramatically expanding our aviation offerings.
Okay, very good. All right, you guys, somehow we just had a panel discussion with 5 people, and I'm right at 60 minutes. So, and we had Q&A. So you guys did a tremendous job. Obviously, you are tremendous professionals. So here's what we heard today. There are several key characteristics that are supporting the region's aviation ecosystem. It's industry expertise, leadership, collaboration, and infrastructure investment, and they're all standing out. Bi-state regionalism, thanks to organizations like East-West Gateway, the leaders that we have here today, and our audience. And it's also evident as in the commitment to raising awareness of the aviation industry and supporting and building career pipelines and career paths. So this ecosystem is working, it's working well. It allows the region to continue to attract talent like our two newest airport directors, Sandy and Danny. It allows us to compete and deliver infrastructure investment that strengthens this already robust sector of our economy. And it clearly indicates great examples of resiliency, rebounding strongly from the Great Flood of 1993, a global pandemic, and any other weather or disruption you can throw at them. Thank you to our panelists, your role with the aviation industry, and also thanks for all of our guests for joining us today. So let's give them a round of applause.